All right. I'm going to start with the song, then I'll get into the church service, I guess. The apologetics lesson that we're going to get from Trent.
Scarecrow in the fair watching the spectacle. It's still no dessert till you finish your vegetables. Circumspect, resurrect him in the vestibule of the building where they killed him. I'm true and living, fuck what they telling me. In the mirror like Corinthians. Uncanny Valley AI hit him with the heads, he screaming, carry, my vision swims. Girlfriend, whenever you're around, light dims. 2 cents. If it's on sight, say less. Where I see it, it ain't no past tense. Little kid, tiny desk, itty bitty violins, big head, blue lips. If you never came back from the dead, can't tell me shit. 12 billion USD hovering over the Gaza Strip. You don't wanna know what it costs to live, what it costs to hide behind eyelids. When your back turned, secret cannibals lick their lips, fingernails sharp. I snatch the lights out of cat so I can see in the dark, so I can see who you are. Pig in the rat, he put them both in the ark with the wink and the laugh. Stop for gas in the desert like the house is sod. Sky hung with a crescent, a veil of stars. Pick up weaving through dead cars, surface to air, camouflage in the truck bed. On guard, best believe them crackers won't make it to Mars. Mars, 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 Mars.
I ain't never asked to be here, so when I decide to leave, all them devils in the details rush to either side of me. Where we going all depends what I pretend that I believe. When I finally meet my maker, I have something up my sleeve. And I find out if the God above me bleed the same as me. Cause I'm tired of calling out for him and falling on my knees. And I'm never coming back from that, so don't wait up for me. You ain't gotta leave a light on, you ain't gotta hide a key. Well, I ain't been myself lately, least I ain't been under you. Who wasted all the time you had talking about what you about to do? When you finally knock on heaven's door, they ain't expecting you. And if you don't get the fuck off the stoop right now, they gonna shoot. Same old song, I sing it one more time. On the day you're gone, and nobody gon' cry. But you take what's yours, and I make it all mine. Till the money's so long, like it's saying bye-bye to you. Clip them wings, change the way time flies for you. 9 lifetimes, cast turn blind eyes to you. Won't ride, die, drive by, or lie for you. Ain't nowhere to run, nowhere to hide for you. They ain't get far without an arm and a leg. And then the beast below the street showed up and told them they dead. They need to meet me like they need a fucking hole in their head. And if you leave it up to me, that be what all of them get.
Fuck what they telling me.
I am not a across the board Billy Woods fan. I don't want to claim that. It's not like I listen to every track or, I think he's the greatest artist alive, but I do really like this one. I think he is thoughtful, right? Sometimes I don't like lyrical rap because of the delivery, and that's just me, right? That's just my problem with liking a specific style of rapping. I don't like Earl that much either, much as I appreciate him as an artist. It's just not a style of, musical delivery that I really enjoy. Anyway, Billy Woods, Corinthians, it's really good. So I'm going to watch this. I just kind of was pulling up my YouTube on the way home from work, and I saw that there was a new Trent video. I have watched 3 or 4 maybe Trent videos. I generally would say I disagree with him. I am a former Protestant. Trent's a Catholic, so already there are going to be some fundamental differences in what we learned, what we believed. I'm not a Protestant anymore, so I have other bigger issues, I would say, with the apologetics side of the world. But I also was never into the New Age movement. I've never been very into woo, as a lot of people call it. I just don't really enjoy entertaining that stuff. And then a lot of it, I talk about this a lot, and it's sort of frustrating that this is always how it goes. But like a lot of New Age stuff does kind of lead you into white supremacist ideology. Not all of it, and certainly not everybody who's into crystals and whatever. Yeah, they're not all Nazis. I would not ever say that. But a lot of conspiracy thinking is very directly downstream from white supremacist ideology. And a lot of them are just straight up white supremacist conspiracies that have sort of lost the cultural knowledge that that's what they are. But anyway, so I'm just saying that to say, like, what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to take issue with some of Trent's criticisms, right? Because coming from my background in religion, I would probably have room to question that, but also just from a what sort of assumptions is he making that are true, right? Because he's talking about a common New Age belief. I don't know what it is yet. We'll find out here in a second. He's talking about a New Age belief that he's going to refute. So what assumptions is he using to refute this with, right? What's he just assuming is true that's in contravention? Because I probably agree that the New Age stuff is wrong and dumb, but he's going to be explaining it away from the point of a Catholic apologist. So I'm interested to see what his angle is, the way he chooses to address this. So it's 16 minutes. Boy, that could take me all day, but hopefully it won't.
Lots of people say, I'm spiritual, not religious, but they end up just creating their own religion, usually based on
I don't say that.
New Age beliefs that became popular in the 1970s, which themselves are just a repackaging of many ancient Eastern religious practices. And one of those common beliefs among the merely spiritual is belief in reincarnation, the idea that after you die, you are reborn into another body. According to the Pew Research Center, 1/3 of all U.S. adults believe in reincarnation, which includes 26% of Protestants and 38% of Catholics. Now, these probably aren't the most devout members of those groups, but it's still shocking to see because belief in reincarnation has tragic consequences. And that's where...
True. Although, look, funnily enough, I was talking to my partner about this yesterday. We were taking a walk. The thing about reincarnation is it's non-falsifiable. I don't believe it, that reincarnation is real. Absolutely not. I do not think that you die and come back. But it's impossible to disprove it because you don't know you've been reincarnated, right? And you can talk about the ascended masters stuff and all these people who are in touch with their previous selves. That's all nonsense. That's total nonsense. But that doesn't mean you can't be reincarnated. I don't believe you can be, but I couldn't prove that you can't. There's no way I can prove that somebody's consciousness didn't exist in a dinosaur 40 million years ago, and now that it's in a human, and then they can be reincarnated into, I don't know, a fish, right, or an eagle, or into an aborted fetus. And then what happens? What happens if you reincarnate as an abortion? These are the real questions we need to be asking.
We're going to talk about today, but before we do that, I hope you will hit the subscribe button and like this episode, not because you want good karma, but just because you're a good viewer who enjoys our work. And
respectfully, I will not. But I will actually, I think there's going to be an ad pivot here. I don't know. I am going to grab my water real quick. My apologies, Trent. You will now have my mostly undivided attention.
Even consider supporting us for as little as $5 a month at
I will not.
trenthornpodcast.com. Now, one place where the tragedy of belief in reincarnation can be seen on full display is the nation of India, home to 94% of the world's Hindu population.
Again, I just want to say, as we get into this stuff about reincarnation, I agree that reincarnation is not real, but I can also not be totally sure, right? I have to be honest and say, I can't prove it's not real. So these people that commit suicide or, I mean, it basically is suicide, whether it's group or otherwise. These people that do that, thinking they'll be reincarnated, neither of us will know, right? They don't know because they're dead. And then if they get reincarnated, they don't remember their previous life. And I don't know because I can't prove somebody's been reincarnated. So this is I agree that it's a bad thing to believe in because I don't believe in reincarnation. And so if you kill yourself, that's it. And I know stories from my trips to India of families who committed mass suicide, right? So it is tragic that people believe this, but you just cannot prove that they are wrong until we figure out how to measure the souls and like the fingerprint of the soul. That is a book title right there, I'll tell you what.
And about half the population believes in reincarnation. This belief also entails the corresponding doctrine of karma, which says, basically, if you are bad in life, you'll be reborn into a worse life, and if you're good in life, you will be reborn into a better life. This has been used to defend India's caste system, which is a social hierarchy based on your family of origin.
The caste system sucks. It is technically outlawed. Let me not be overly broad. It was outlawed. I don't know if Modi allowed it to be reinstituted or not, although he's the kind of guy who would. So it's possible that the caste system has been re-recognized, but I don't think so. But it's terrible. I mean, I absolutely, I love India. I think India is so cool. They have such an incredible history, and the people that I have met have been fantastic. It makes me really sad, the stuff that's going on and has gone on and has been done to the country of India. But the caste system, it's pretty bad. I am not somebody who thinks that all native religions or all native practices need to be modernized to keep up with modern sensibilities, but I have a sort of fundamental belief that all people are the same. And so any system that reinforces the idea that some people are just naturally born worse than other people, I have a hard time with that, right? I can't really accept that. So that's a bad system, and it should be done away with. And it's just tough. It's tough because, even if there's not officially a caste system, people know, social classes, people recognize what social class you're in by how you dress or how you talk or how you eat. And so even if you're not officially in a different caste, or even if officially you're not allowed to discriminate based on caste, you still can. It's still easy to do because you can tell who's a Dalit, right? Anyway, it's unfortunate.
The lowest caste are the Dalit, previously called the Untouchables, who were treated essentially like lepers and segregated in society, being relegated to jobs in areas like sanitation or dead animal disposal because they were considered the most unclean group.
Also, I interrupt all the time. This is the most important job in society. And I've been to India, and waste disposal is a huge problem. So much like in the West, in Christianity, we treat women as basically free labor, and we mock the labor they do as not worthy of a man. Without the labor they do, the world would stop. And that's how it is with sanitation workers too, right? Without sanitation workers, you have cholera outbreaks and leprosy happens. So it's important to have these people. And here's what you get when you have this oppressed class doing essential labor. It's not all that different from prison labor. What you get is a group of people who are doing a very essential job, a job that should be unionized, and in the United States at least is pretty well compensated. You make pretty good money if you're in sanitation. Over there, what you have is people doing a really important job for basically no money. And they can't fight you on it. It's a really perfect system for the people who are running it. Everybody else, not as much. But if you're running the system, it is fantastic.
Discrimination against lower castes is justified by the assumption that the members of the lower castes must have been evil in a previous life in order to be reincarnated into that caste.
It is very
India
convenient,
outlawed caste discrimination in 1950, but it persists in many aspects of Indian culture. The Catholic Church was instrumental in fighting the caste system and has routinely denounced it as gravely sinful. But these prejudices have even been seen in Catholic communities. Thankfully, more positive steps seem to be taken, and in February of this year, the Indian Catholic Bishops' Conference elected its first Dalit president. However, belief in reincarnation along with New Age ideology can be found throughout the affluent Western world too. To give you an example, I want to share a sad story about a young man named Brandon Bremer. He was a prodigy who learned to read at 18 months and completed high school by age 10.
Okay, so he was autistic. Right. Basically, there's no other explanation for learning to read at 18 months. He's autistic. All right, now, I don't know how much that's going to contribute to his experience of life. But I'm being... I could probably look it up. I'm being a little bit quick to assume that, but it's pretty rational. It could be something else. I acknowledge that.
But in 2005, at the age of 14, Brandon took his own life. We don't know why Brandon did this, but we know that having an extremely high IQ and atypical neurological patterns like autism can make someone more at risk for self-destructive thoughts.
Also because autism is fucking difficult to live with. Like, I am not as we don't think I'm autistic. Okay? We're pretty sure I'm not. But my partner is likely autistic and her brother is diagnosed. Okay? It is very difficult as an autistic person to experience the world around you because the world around you it doesn't make a lot of sense in many cases because for a lot of autistic people they have a hard time with like people not meaning what they say, right? Or not following through. It's very confusing because I say exactly what I mean every time and I follow through, right? It may be good and it may be bad. If I tell you I'm going to hit you, I'm going to hit you, right? If I tell you that I'm going to go play with my trains for a while, I'm going to go play with I'm not making it up, right? This is just how my life is. And so when people don't interact with you in that way, it can be chaotic. Sensory inputs can be very overwhelming. So like, it's just not a good time. And 14 is a terrible time in most people's lives anyway. I mean, it's just, I don't know how much more complex it is. It's sad. I don't know if he was getting treatment.
What really struck out to me for Brandon's
therapy.
case was the book his mother Patty wrote after his death called Guided Destiny, where she turns to New Age belief and reincarnation to cope with the loss of her son. On one
okay. Okay, well, this is very sad, but this is somebody who is not appropriately dealing with grief. And it is sad, right? I mean, her son killed himself. That's tough. That's tough to deal with, I imagine.
Website, she says of the book, the words that appeared on the paper, words that were not mine, words I believe came through the soul of my son through my fingers onto the keys. Most religions confirm that soul never dies. What I learned were the many lives of souls, reincarnation. This can be seen early on in the book where Patty describes her difficult labor with Brandon and how a heartbeat was not detected, so doctors feared the worst. Brandon's mother then describes, not as an eyewitness but more as a storyteller, how an angel named Tobias was present in the room during all of this, and that the soul of her unborn child left his body and was replaced by this angel named Tobias. She
That's weird. That's a weird thing to think.
writes, Tobias watched the young soul leave the room. Tobias knew this soul had come to Earth not properly prepared for such a complicated human birth. He had grown frightened by the pain and the anguish that permeated the room. The young soul lacked the experience to help the family through this difficult time. Brandon's mother then says Tobias had spent many lifetimes here on Earth. With each lifetime, he acquired vast amounts of knowledge. Tobias felt the need to teach. She then says before her son was born, Tobias smiled at the parents. He looked around the room, then glanced upward from whence he had come. He condensed his form to fit into the baby. Tobias, now to be called Brandon, was born. You might notice that Brandon's name in articles has two N's. In the book, Patty says Brandon added an extra N to his name one day when he was 2 years old and said it wasn't a mistake. The memoir then narrates the event from Tobias's perspective. My family has allowed me to change the spelling of my earthly name. I presented the change as
I am trying to be kind, but this shit is crazy.
a test of my freedom. My choice received thought and respect. I have learned my family values me and my decisions. Now, obviously, this is a very tragic case, and a lot of the story related to Brandon is reminiscent of the indigo child fad popular in New Age circles that developed in the 1970s, but exploded in popularity in 1999 with the publication of The Indigo Children, The New Kids Have Arrived. Here's a segment on the phenomenon from CNN.
Teens like Sandy claim they're part of a special generation born after 1978 known as indigo children, for the deep blue auras that psychics say they see around them.
This is also crazy.
Indigo children have high IQs and tend to be rebellious and oversensitive. They're often also
Oh, teenagers. You're talking about teenagers. Rebellious, oversensitive. Teenagers.
said to share special gifts, heightened intuition, and psychic abilities.
She's one of them, isn't she?
Excuse me?
An indigo, like my son.
In recent years, the indigo phenomenon has made its way into movies, books, websites, and even to the therapist's office.
I don't know how widespread this was because I was not paying attention, but I know there were seen people who were into it.
They will say, I've heard that you deal with indigo children or children who are highly sensitive. Can you help me with my child? You think? I don't know.
Psychotherapist Julie Rosenshine says parents seek her help with kids they believe are indigos, many of whom have trouble socializing and paying attention in school.
I wonder if it's just autistic kids, maybe, that we're talking about here. Again, this just feels like people complain that everybody's autistic now. We have all these autistic people now, and it's because of something. I think that they have just always been autistic, and we just didn't call it autism or recognize it as autism, because this sounds like autistic small children, right? Really sensitive, different. They don't play well with others. Maybe they're precociously smart. This is autism that this lady is dealing with. Maybe not in every case, but it's autism, or it's some other ADHD or something. There's not indigo children.
Usually I'll get an email that will say, my child is having meltdowns, she can't sleep at night, she says that she sees things in her room, can you help me?
And what do you say?
I usually say, wow, you're seeing something at night? Do you know that sometimes angels visit at night? And your eyes will sometimes cloud up with tears even, maybe, because it's the first time that anybody really affirmed for them that what they saw was not crazy, did not make them crazy.
Many New Agers believe indigo children are the reincarnated forms of advanced beings like angels or aliens. This webpage gives helpful tips to distinguish an indigo child from other children like...
All right. This is a blog called Gems of Wisdom. I don't know how big a deal it is. Could be one person's blog. Maybe it represents the whole community. I don't know. But I don't know if this is the number one gem and indigo child blog on the web.
Starseeds who, quote, feel like they don't belong on Earth because their souls originate from higher dimensional planes or other starseeds.
Oh, also, not to make this really dark, but like a lot of people who are really into this stuff that develop an interest in it later in life and think they're star seeds, or maybe they have been abducted or whatever. A lot of that is displacing trauma. If you look at what the research shows, a lot of people who believe in alien abductions and have these like elaborate space fantasies, a lot of those people were harmed, let's say, as children or maybe even young adults, right? Maybe even as adults. You can suppress and cover up stuff even when you're grown. But like a lot of that is people who are, again, not dealing with trauma, and instead of just trying to ignore the trauma, they manage to replace the trauma with a different experience so they don't have to think about it.
Systems. They often experience strange dreams, past life memories of other worlds, and a deep knowing that they have a cosmic purpose. Now, this may seem like harmless kookiness, but it has real consequences. For example, I did a previous episode on how when weird things happen, it's not always demons, but sometimes it is demons. And it seems clear that if someone encounters a so-called...
It is not demons. Like, all right. Yes, so far I have largely agreed with Trent. But at this point, he is assuming that demons are real. I used to believe in demons. As a Christian, I did believe in demons. As a Protestant. But I do not believe in those anymore. So you would need to illustrate for me that they are real.
Spiritual being that leads them to belief in a lie like reincarnation, then they're dealing with a fallen angel or a demon and not a true messenger of God. Second, childhood, and especially the teenage years, is hard enough.
We are also just assuming God is real. I know he's an apologist, I know, but like, I'm just pointing that out. The assumption that he's making is like that these people are wrong because it's not angels, it's demons, because of God. And I would question God. That's my first question.
To navigate and learn how to socially adapt to without thinking that you're a reincarnated angel or alien. This isn't helpful to accomplish those goals of maturing through these years, and it's probably going to exacerbate other things like mental illness or clinical depression. Third, belief in reincarnation robs people of the joy God wants us to have in Jesus Christ. As a parent, it gives me a heavy heart to read a book written by someone who lost a child. But one of the hopes we have in Christ is that our loved ones are not gone forever.
All right. Is suicide keep you out of heaven, Trent? That's a good question to ask, because for much of religious history, Catholic and Protestant, suicide was like, you don't get in. You committed suicide, you don't get in. So, unless Trent is saying this lady knows that if she goes to hell, she'll see her son again, which I don't think he does, this wouldn't make any sense, because, again, this is all very sad, all right? I don't want to be glib. I don't want to be needlessly callous. So I want that to be clear. But like, what happened in many theologies would lead you to believe he is not in heaven. So she doesn't have a hope of seeing him again. Because 14 is old enough, right? The age of accountability, when you should know the difference between right and wrong, and God will consider you accountable for your actions, right? Different people have different ideas. If you believe in original sin and he wasn't baptized, well, he's fucked no matter what. But this is not fair because Braden's not in heaven. Look, again, it's nice to believe that, but a lot of religious people would not agree with that. And I don't believe that there's an afterlife, right? So to me, it's just very sad. To her, it would be sad in a much worse way if she chose the path of religion.
They also aren't shuffled off into some other life we don't know about. We can still express love for that person by praying for him or her as they await the resurrection of the dead, where we have a hope of being.
This is a weird Catholic thing. As a Protestant, as a former Protestant, when you die, that's it. God, you're dead. Done. God has judged you. I have read the entire Divine Comedy. It was really not very exciting. But purgatory, right? Purgatory is not real. There is no reason to believe in it, but it's kind of comforting for people. And I guess it makes you feel like you can do something.
Being reunited with them in the life to come. Finally, reincarnation fools us into thinking that we have unlimited time to work our way into heaven. But heaven is not something we can merit solely through our own human works. It is the gift of God, and we each have one life in which to accept.
Hold on. It's an interesting gift because it's a gift that comes with a punishment, right? It's not a very good gift. You can say, well, heaven is the greatest gift and God wants us to choose it freely. Sure. But like, if it's true, if what God is saying is true, and if you accept him and follow him, you get this great gift. You get to go to heaven. If you don't, then he is sending your ass to hell. That is, you can say, well, you're doing it yourself because you've sinned and God doesn't allow us. That's not. God is saying, if you don't do this, you go to hell. God could change the rules. He made the rules, right? He is the rules. Is he not powerful enough to change the rules? Anyway.
Accept or reject it. That's why I don't get the fascination with Andy Weir's short story, The Egg.
All I'm saying is if I'm getting a birthday present and I choose not to take it, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to take this back to the store. Oh, I have 2 of these already. I don't then get beaten, right? I don't then have people come to my house and break my legs with crowbars. It's just like, oh, I didn't want this. And then there's no consequence, except maybe the person who got it feels bad. And then I would feel bad for making them. But I don't get kneecapped for saying, I don't want this gift.
Which describes a person dying and finding out that they have been reincarnated thousands of times, and everybody else in the universe is just another reincarnated version of them. As science fiction, it's a neat concept and helpful to teach people empathy and to ask the question, what if I had been born into other circumstances, what would my life be like? But some people get wrapped up into the story so much thinking that it's real and how beautiful that would be, when in reality, if this were true, it would be totally nihilistic. It wouldn't matter what choices you made in life because you have to live out every good and every evil person's life, as if that was the only way to attain knowledge.
And the idea of God creating you and giving you a cosmic purpose has no connection to this at all, or relationship. Not in any way. There's no way you could think that some people might like one version of that versus a different one.
And you couldn't truly love others because reality would just be a diluted kind of self-love if you think God made the whole universe just for you and you are all that matters. As I said, it's interesting.
But if I'm right, then there aren't really others. So if I love me, I love everybody. Again, this is the sort of stuff that I have no interest in. This kind of very like freshman in college doing bong rips in the basement, that kind of stuff. Like, I don't really find it even worth engaging with. But if everybody is an extension of me, and I need to treat myself with kindness, then I'm going to treat everybody with kindness, because everybody is me. So there is no other, but there are still external manifestations that are different, right? And you should be treating them the same way you would treat yourself, because they are yourself. I don't know what you lose there.
Story, but when it comes to the way the world actually works, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, "Death is the end of man's earthly pilgrimage, of the time of grace and mercy which God offers him so as to work out his earthly life in keeping with the divine plan, and to decide his ultimate destiny. When the single course of our earthly life is completed, we shall not return to other earthly lives. It is appointed for men to die once," Hebrews 9:27.
Now, I know some people have their own ways about this, but Lazarus comes to mind. The son of the woman who Jesus raised comes to mind. The son of the woman that Elijah the prophet raised in the Old Testament comes to mind. There's a lot of people, I mean, it's truly a shocking number of people come back from the dead in the Bible. And am I expected to believe that none of them lived out their natural lives and then died again? Because I guess you could say that Hebrews is saying natural life, without miraculous intervention. But there are a lot of people in the Bible who I have to assume have died multiple times, and it didn't seem to be an issue.
There is no reincarnation after.
They were reincarnated in their own bodies. Right.
After death. In the 3rd century, the ecclesial writer Origen wrote that reincarnation, which he called transmigration, was foreign to the Church of God and not handed down by the apostles, nor anywhere set forth in the scriptures. In that passage, Origen discusses how people misinterpret Matthew 17:12-13 as saying John the Baptist was a reincarnated Elijah. This is a verse modern New Agers also misunderstand. And
I don't know anybody who would misunderstand that verse. I'm not saying that people don't, and certainly it's not the way I was taught, so it seems obvious to me. Maybe it isn't. But it's clearly metaphorical. Elijah is coming before the Messiah, right? And John comes before me. Do you guys get it? John is Elijah. He's not literally the reincarnated Elijah, but he is effectively Elijah, right? That's all that means.
It's clarified in Luke 1:16-17, where the angel tells John the Baptist's father Zechariah that his future son will turn many of the sons of Israel to the Lord their God, and for him in the spirit and power of Elijah, meaning he will carry on Elijah's legacy, not actually be Elijah. Reincarnation was debated in the early church because Gnostic heretics believed it was part of the process of releasing the soul from the physical prison of the body. Gnostics believed the spiritual was good and the material was bad, and are probably
True.
the people St. Paul refers to in 1 Timothy 4:3, who forbid marriage and enjoin abstinence from foods, since those things represent material pleasure. Christianity, in contrast, taught that matter is a good thing that God made, and that people have a right to marry unless they've given up that right to pursue a celibate life to serve the church, like St. Paul did. And Paul writes in his letter to the Corinthians about the importance of the body, referring to it as a tent, saying, "For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Here indeed we groan and long to put on our heavenly dwelling, so that by putting it on we may not be found naked. For while we are still in this tent, we sigh with anxiety. Not that we should be unclothed, but that we should be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. This means that when we die, we don't become angels, as some people think. Our souls go to be with God or go to be apart from God. However, that disembodied existence is not meant to be permanent. That would be like being locked out of your house without any clothes on forever. So St. Paul is confident that in the next life, we will eventually be fully clothed in a glorious resurrected body. So Scripture tells us it is appointed for men to die once, and then a judgment that has eternal consequences.
So he believes that we will get like literal heavenly bodies when we go to heaven. That's something I hear debated. You know, certainly when I was in the church, that was a topic of conversation. You know, what will our bodies in heaven look like? The real answer is nobody knows, and who cares? Because we'll be in heaven, it won't matter, right? I need to go plug this in. All right. We are good. Let's see if I can remember where I was.
The church fathers also made several arguments.
Oh, heavenly bodies. The way it was always taught to me, which helps, I would say helps harmonize the idea to me, is we know that we will be able to recognize each other in heaven. That's that's in the text. We don't know what we'll look like in heaven. Maybe we'll look like angels. Maybe we'll look like we look now, but like better. Maybe we will be totally spirit and amorphous, but we'll be able to recognize each other somehow because God has told us that we'll be able to. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Now, some people believe that like whatever you do to your body is how you will be like in heaven. So some people are really anti-tattoo or piercings, and I don't see any reason why your heavenly body wouldn't be the most like perfect form of your earthly body, at least. You know, you're not going to have cerebral palsy in heaven just because you had it on earth. But some people really care about the body. That was not an emphasis in my I don't know, education in the church.
Arguments against reincarnation that still hold up today. First, humans don't behave as if they possess souls that lived before the birth of their bodies. Tertullian put it this way: if souls depart at different ages of human life, how is it that they come back again at one uniform age? For all men are imbued with an infant soul at their birth. But how happens it that a man who dies in old age returns to life as an infant? I ask.
So, see, this gives me trouble with original sin. If you get an infant soul, how has the infant soul committed a sin?
Then how the same souls are resumed, which can offer no proof of their identity, either by their disposition or habits or living. So the absence of infants and children who act like mature adults is evidence against the theory of reincarnation.
It is not evidence against the theory of reincarnation. One, there are children who act like adults, and a lot of them are autistic. But two, this argument doesn't hold for me, I think. Like, who's to say that a soul that's reincarnated doesn't just get like rebooted the same way a computer does, right? All right, you lived out your life in this body. Now you go to be a soul for a little while until you get reincarnated, and then we use the flashy thingy from Men in Black on you. Bink. Now you don't remember. and you just have to grow up and experience life again. Why couldn't that be true? I don't believe any of this is true, but why couldn't that be true? I think it totally makes sense. You're a soul. When you're a soul, you have all the memories, right? When you're dead, you have all of the stuff comes back to you. And you remember all your past lives. You go into a new body, bam, you're back at square one, right? I think that Hindus, that's something to do with the samsara cycle. Anyway, I don't believe in reincarnation. But I also don't believe that souls are real. So that is a bigger reason why I don't.
Of course, a defender of reincarnation would probably say that although a person's soul inhabits a new body, his memories and personality don't. But this makes reincarnation the practical equivalent of not surviving death. And it defeats...
Correct. I agree with that. And it is non-falsifiable.
It's the purpose of learning from your past mistakes in past lives in order to be reincarnated. Also, St. Irenaeus noted this argument, saying that Plato invented this response to get around rebuttals. He then basically asked in response, how do you even know you were reincarnated if you lose all your memories after death? Another argument against reincarnation is called the population argument. It relies on the claim made by proponents of reincarnation that new souls are never created or destroyed. Instead,
just like matter,
souls are only reborn into other bodies. But in Tertullian's words, if the living come from the dead, just as the dead proceed from the living, then there must always remain unchanged one and the selfsame number of mankind. Tertullian noted, and modern science has confirmed, that there has been, quote, a gradual growth of the human population. This growth can be explained only by new souls coming into existence and conflicts with the notion of the perpetual reincarnation of the same souls into different bodies.
I am going to argue with this. Again, these are just sort of questions that aren't addressed, and I get it. Trent's doing a 16-minute video, right? He's trying to keep it tight. I get it. I'm not accusing him of trying to be sneaky. But there could be new souls getting added into the mix. That doesn't mean that reincarnation doesn't happen, right? Maybe there were 4 billion souls that could go into humans. And over time, we've added another 3 billion into the mix. But those first 4 billion are still there, right? So you add one as you have new people. But then when you lose somebody, that soul gets a chance to get reincarnated. Why can't that be true? Now he's saying the whole, people say they're not created or destroyed. They just have always existed. But I think it's more fun to argue a slightly different point.
As the Catechism says, the Church teaches that every spiritual soul is created immediately by God. It is not produced by the parents, and also that it is immortal. It does not perish when it separates from the body at death, and it will be reunited with the body at the final resurrection. Other defenders of reincarnation claim to offer empirical evidence in the form of past lives testimony, or testimony of alleged lives of previous reincarnations of the person.
We call that bullshit. I have no qualms calling this bullshit.
Had. These testimonies, such as those gathered among children by the late psychiatrist Ian Stevenson.
Oh, the theosophical. I'm not going to go into a diatribe about theosophy, but Nazis were really into it. So that probably tells you enough. Obviously Trent's not on board with the theosophists either, but this is like a specific ideology that we're dealing with here.
For example, many of the subjects of Stevenson's interviews were children who lived in places like India, where reincarnation is widely accepted. This suggests that their stories were more likely the products of social conditioning than actual memories of past lives. Also, although the children in these studies were not thought to be capable of deceiving the interviewers, they were capable of confusing fantasy with reality, telling stories about imaginary friends or imaginary adventures, for example. In fact, many of the anecdotes Stevenson shares rely on ambiguous details that are better explained by a child's imperfect grasp of reality. Skeptic Robert Carroll offers the following example. One case involved an Idaho girl who at age 2 would point to photographs of her sister, dead from a car accident 3 years before she was born, and say, "That was me." The believer thinks the 2-year-old meant, I was my sister in a previous life. The skeptic thinks she meant, that's a picture of me. The skeptic sees the 2-year-old as making a mistake. The believer sees her as trying to communicate a message about reincarnation.
Which is, of course, absurd unless we're talking about when you are reincarnated in heaven in a new body. That's not absurd. That's totally rational and totally reasonable. I have said before, I don't think you have to be an unreasonable, irrational person to be a Christian. But I'm just pointing out that we're playing team sports here. Okay? Fair as it is, Trent is a Catholic apologist. This is his team. He obviously is going to assume that his team is correct in this stuff. But these people believing reincarnation just sort of happens indefinitely, and Trent believing that you die and then whenever you're reincarnated in heaven in a new body or in your old body. I'm not exactly sure where he stands on that. That's reincarnation. Like, it's the same thing. It is a slightly different directional outcome, because for Trent it's like God, and for New Age people it's like universal energy or whatever. But it's the same outcome. You're reincarnated, so it's real. Reincarnation is real. But Trent doesn't think it happens on Earth.
Of course, we can make all kinds of philosophical arguments about what happens after death, but the best evidence would be an authoritative teaching from someone who not only died and came back to life, but holds authority over death itself.
That would be the best evidence. Now, we don't have that evidence. We have the Bible, right? I'm being snarky a little bit. But we have the Bible, which tells us the story about a guy who it claims died and came back to life. But we don't have evidence that that actually happened. We have people saying that it happened 30 years down the road. Possibly current with his death. But the letters from Paul, which are the earliest sources we have in the New Testament, date from the 50s, the earliest. So that's 20 years after Jesus died that we know people were saying that he came back from the dead. That's enough time for legends to grow up, especially when you're talking about a guy that they thought was going to deliver them from the Romans. I'm just saying, we have a lot of stories about a guy who died and came back to life. And there are a lot of myths that have stories about getting power over death. It doesn't mean that they're real. It doesn't mean it's evidence. It just means that people are scared of death and would like there to be somebody who is in charge of it.
Our Lord says in the book of Revelation, I am the first and the last and the living one. I was dead, and see, I am alive forever and ever, and I have the keys of death and of Hades. For more on this topic, see my 20 Answers booklet on death and judgment, and for a defense of what the true Jesus would say about these issues, see my book Counterfeit Christ, and my previous episode on the New Age beliefs of Deepak Chopra. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a very blessed day.
Like I said, I largely agree with Trent. I really wasn't watching this video as a way to get dunks in on him. That was not my goal. And I don't think that I spent the video doing that. But I was interested to see what his approach to responding to some claims from his perspective as a Catholic apologist, as a religious person. I just kind of was interested to see what that looked like. And I don't know. I think I don't agree with any of this reincarnation stuff, so I have no qualms agreeing with him. I have some quibbles, but more just to I would be interested to see how he would respond to some of the smaller points that I don't think are really very important, but when you don't consider the counterfactual, right? You don't consider the other side of, well, I guess what I'm saying is reincarnation. I have a different view of when it happens, but I definitely believe in reincarnation because Trent's talking about a spiritual body or a heavenly body or a perfect body or whatever, right? So he is being reunited with the body. So in his version of heaven, when you go to heaven as a soul, you are put into a body somehow. That's a heavenly body, but that is reincarnation. I guess if you want to get really technical, maybe carnation is something specific to Earth. But the same idea is true. The soul doesn't die when you die. It continues to exist. And eventually, maybe you'll be conscious again as you. You believe the same things, but it's really silly when they say it. But it's not silly when I say it. And when I talk about the soul, you know, it's not everybody gets a second shot. Only some people do. Yeah, I don't know. I hope I wasn't unfair. I don't think I was overly mean-spirited. I hope I wasn't. I don't think I'm going to tag Trent in this, but I feel comfortable if he looks over it. I don't think I've said anything I can't stand behind. And it was interesting. You know, he's a smart guy. He's read a lot. You know, got no problems with his credentials. I disagree sort of fundamentally on a lot of the things that he certainly believes, even if he doesn't, like, even if he's not just making videos about him. But broadly, I find him perfectly fine. So this was not a dunk video. This was not a set the internet on fire video. This was just me trying to see what are his blind spots. You know, what's the stuff that he is just assuming without interrogating it. But I'm gonna call it here. So I'll do it for me for the day and possibly for the week.